What's up, guys? Today we are going to be installing an M50 manifold on the supercharged E36 M3. The reason I'm doing this is because I think this setup is a little bit choked for air, both on the intake side and the exhaust side. We'll probably cover the exhaust side in another episode. But with the help of some rally road parts, I'm going to make sure that everything is sealed correctly and that we don't have any boost leaks when we do the manifold swap. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I'm just going to show you the way that I'm doing it, and you kind of do it a little bit differently between force induction and NA setups. There's a couple parts that I took a little bit more care in doing to make sure I don't have any leaks under boost. So let me show you guys that now. So the other thing we're gonna do is actually look at the ECU and dial in the volumetric efficiency table after the manifold install, just to see what sort of gains we can expect on low and upper end, and what kind of effect it has on the motor itself, the characteristics both in the lower and upper RPM range, and what the actual percent change is in a force induction setup, so you guys can make an informed decision if the M50 manifold swap is a good way to spend your money on a force induction setup. But I think it is. The runners are a lot bigger, and the actual ports are port matched to the cylinder heads a lot better. All right, here's our M50 manifold. One modification I made right off the bat was I drilled and tapped 1/8 inch NPT fittings so I can run some barbs, so I can connect my map sensor and a bunch of other vacuum lines. I actually have one tapped in the front so I can run that to my blow-off valve. And then I have a bunch of rally road parts. So this guy connects to the bottom of the manifold, goes right in there, and then it's just this strong zip tie that kind of holds it together. And then we got the hose kit for the idle control valve that comes off of there too. And then we have a throttle plate adapter that adapts this to the S52 one, or ODB2 cars. One thing I'm gonna have to do right off the bat is I ordered these 1/8 to I think it's 1/4 inch barbs from McMaster Car. I don't like how they put this little weird thing on the end here, so I'm actually gonna just cut those off with a Dremel, and then that way my hoses fit on there a little bit better. I wanted them to fit on there pretty snug. Yeah, so the hoses I'm running are quite a bit more narrow, but I wanted them to fit on there super tight so we don't have any issues with these slipping off and causing problems. And then the other thing that I did was I ordered this little fitting here that screws into the air intake temp bung on the ODB1 cars. We're not actually going to be using that because I have my temp sensor already tapped in right there. So I got this little block off fitting from McMaster Car as well. And then the last thing I did was I was not gonna use this little vacuum line underneath the manifold. They leak and you can't get a zip tie around them because they kind of sit in there a little bit. So I ended up taking some JB weld, and I JB welded the whole inside, and then just for extra reassurance, just the tip of it. So that should be fully sealed and then ready to go. But of course, after all this is done, I'm gonna boost leak check this again to make sure it's all good, because I absolutely hate boost leaks, because anytime you're trying to retune the car and you're chasing after boost leaks, it's gonna cause all kinds of tuning issues. So make sure you guys start there. So check out the difference between these two manifolds. So if you look at the ports, here's the OBD2 one, and you just have like this massive lip on the inside. So basically the air is gonna come in and then just sort of like hit the edges of the actual ports on the head and just restrict your airflow and make all kinds of turbulence. Meanwhile, the ODB1 is nice and port match to actual cylinder head itself inside of there. The other difference is the actual chamber is a lot bigger than the M50, and then the runners, the width of the runners are a lot different. Wish I had something to measure, but yeah, you could just see on camera the difference between the two. Now, the reason they switched to this on the OBD2, this thinner runner, is to add a bunch of torque, low-end torque. So when you switch to these on an NA car, you lose a bunch of low-end torque and then add a bunch of power up top. So it just kind of moves your power band. On a forced induction application, we have air at all RPM, so this is extremely beneficial to switch. The other thing I noticed that's kind of interesting that no one really talks about is the placement of the actual fuel injector. So on the M52, it's a little more shallow and closer to the actual port, and these are further away. So I feel like you would get a little bit more mixing and atomization out of the fuel injection. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, just kind of noting all the differences between the two. This is the Rally Road kit for the idle control valve. You got this little fitting that goes in here, and then they have like this high strength zip tie that you put on there to hold it in. Not really a huge fan of that, but I really don't see any other way to mount that. And then they have these nice hoses. I think there's like 50 bucks, and just sort of like way better than these crappy rubber hoses stock. But I'm not a huge fan that this kind of just like flops around, especially when this isn't really mounted all that great. There's a lot of weight on this, and you know, this moving around, this seal could kind of get messed up, I think. But basically we have it going into this fitting here, the hose, when I connect my throttle body back up, and then this hose will kind of just sit on the side of the opening, and I kind of put it off to the right side and it's flipped the other way, so should be good. All right, the new manifold is in. I did have to take the whole cowl apart and kind of piece it back together because new manifold is a lot taller and it's tough to shove it in there. The stock one, I was able to just throw it in there. So just need to reroute the vacuum lines, and then I'm actually going to replace the vacuum line that goes to the fuel pressure regulator. It was a stock hard line and it has little rubber kind of sections that go in between the hard lines, and that was all deteriorated because it was original, and I don't want that to leak under boost. So yeah, one thing that sketches me out a little bit is, I don't know if you can see this on camera, is these little spacers kind of got bent, and I think these injectors are a little bit taller than the stock ones, and when I was compressing the fuel rail down, it wasn't sitting flush with the original mounting point like you're supposed to use with these little brackets here from Rally Road. So really don't hope my injectors are too tight in there and they crack or something else happens, so that would be bad. And the other thing is I need to figure out something with my dipstick. A lot of people will just make a little bracket that goes from one of the bolts down there to, there's a little kind of place where the original bracket mounted, so I'm gonna have to make something to hold this dipstick back in. Alright, if everything goes correctly here, I should have a overlay on the screen of my laptop in tuning, which is kind of cool. So let me get in here. And what we're going to do is a little scientific experiment of the change that the M50 manifold had made to the volumetric efficiency of the motor itself. So what I'm going to do is turn on auto tune for the VE table, and you guys can see real time what kind of changes, either plus or minus at different loads, arbitrary number, but you can kind of get a percent difference from the number that was in there to what it's actually changing it to. So let's drive around for a little bit and see what kind of changes this manifold made for us. Alright, so green are the tune cells, or retune cells. So we can already see that it's taking out a bunch of fuel. I'm just going to kind of go around in the lower cruising RPM. So this is telling me that the motor is actually less efficient at lower RPM, which makes sense because NA, these M50 manifolds make a lot less torque down low. So let's see what happens though at the higher RPMs. So they're actually retuned properly. And you can see in that difference table, you know, it's pulling a bunch of fuel out of it, or volumetric efficiency. So when you have extra efficiency, you have to add fuel. When you reduce efficiency, you have to reduce fuel. So this is mainly a fuel table, but it measures, it's kind of an indication of the efficiency of the motor itself. Alright, we're going to come up here and do a full pull real quick and see what the higher RPM numbers give us. Of course, I got an old lady in front of me. Cells up there before, so alright, hopefully we can do a little bit longer pull here. Some old lady pulled out in front of me. Some of these cells in a steady state so we can kind of actually tune them. And that was very fast. That's what it is. A little bit sketchy. I should probably get some new tires soon. I always forget how quick this car is. It's insane for just a crazy that it's pulling a bunch of fuel from the VE table. I was not really expecting that. Again, if you look down here at the difference chart, 34%, 25, I mean, that's crazy. But that is at the lower kind of limit there. Up top, it's like 3% plus or minus, which is fairly normal. Driving on the street, I'm only hitting a small percentage of the VE table. With a dyno, you can actually like load up the dyno itself to kind of simulate like going up or down a hill or something like that. And it'll hit like any load cell you want pretty much. Granted, you have, you know, the boost to actually reach those limits, so. Let's look at our V8 table here when we're parked. Okay, so it looks like mid RPM range was pulling a bunch of fuel, and right up top you can see it's actually adding fuel. I didn't really do a full pull, but I would imagine that the efficiency up top would greatly increase with those fatter runners. Let's see what else. But yeah, all in the lower and mid RPM range, it was just pulling a bunch of fuel. So it kind of moves that torque band up to the top of the RPM range. And it's a popular mod for, like, you know, NA setups, but I don't really see why, because you just lose a bunch of efficiency in the lower RPMs. I mean, yeah, you might gain a couple, you know, horsepower up top, but it's not really worth it in an NA car. My car, because it's forced induction, I can't really notice that much of a difference, but yeah. I really hope that this was a good kind of intro to the BEMS platform as well, because I know you guys really haven't seen this much. So it's, you can see the auto tune feature and kind of some of the, what the UI looks like. It's a pretty nifty ECU. One thing I need to figure out is when I have the AC on and then the drag from the supercharger from the belt, it's really tough to get this car to idle properly. There's just a lot of drag on the motor at idle, and that idle control valve is pretty much maxing itself out, trying to keep itself idling. So sometimes when it comes to stops, it likes to like either bog or stall. So I either need to make the settings a little bit more aggressive on the actual idle control valve itself. There's a PID settings, like there's an oscillator, there's the strength of it, so there's a bunch of settings you can kind of fine tune for that. But yeah, so I hope you guys found this video useful and giving you some data whether or not you should swap to an M50 manifold, whether you're NA or turbo or supercharged. It may be worth it on the turbo applications, obviously, but NAs, I would almost keep that, you know, narrow runner length and keep that low end torque. These cars are very torquey stock, so it kind of sucks ruining that. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and stay tuned for the next one.